When I was young, all the stories I read and everything I learned about were stories about boys or men. It was as though girls and women had no personal history. So it was important for me to try to imbue value into my own life story, even if it was as simple as sitting home thinking about something. My childhood had value. It was a storybook, even though the storybooks I read as a kid were, Tom Sawyer and Robinson Crusoe and, the rest of the gang. So I think it was sort of the beginning of a mild-mannered feminist approach to making art. Almost all the videotapes that I shot were about my childhood, from the age of maybe 12 to 19, actually, so puberty as well. And this particular tape, My Puberty, features my life story from 1961 to 62. It was an elaborate production. It involved building sets and creating more complicated soundtracks. I actually played a 12-year-old when I was 36. Originally, I had hired a young girl to play me as a 12-year-old, but the day before the shoot, she called in sick. So I had to immediately scurry into the closet, and I fit into all of her costumes, fortunately, and at 36 played 12. And the piece actually worked a little bit better that way. It was funnier. Now I look back and I see myself dressed in baby doll pajamas with rubber rollers in my hair, reminiscing about what it was like to be a young girl. Originally, My Puberty was part of a series of stories called Body Parts that I produced for public radio. And they were like 5-minute pieces that people would hear on the air. I decided that My Puberty, which was one of the pieces, was funny enough and visual enough to require a visual interpretation. So I illustrated it and turned it from radio into a videotape. It's real easy to tell a story on the radio. I mean, I can talk about walking into a huge department store and I don't have to worry about actually seeing it. But for this production, I did hire a large studio. I built sets. I had actors. I actually had some kids that came on set because they had to play 12-year-olds along with me. I had to have teachers on the set, a nurse. So it was a pretty elaborate production, actually the most elaborate production I ever had done up to that point. And I don't think I did one after that quite so complicated. I'd like to invite you to watch My Puberty. It's in Technicolor. It's like a cartoon story of my childhood growing up. Check it out.
One day in 1961, my dad was barbecuing some ribs in the backyard. My Uncle Harry was hanging around and sniffed the air.
That smells just like creation.
My dad told Harry, "You are crazy." But Uncle Harry was adamant. He turned to me, full of emotion.
Eileen, one night while Adam was sleeping, way back when, God took one of his ribs and made the first woman, Eve.
I knew the story from nursery school, but had never really thought about what it meant. Did girls have to become ribs before they became women? How did it work?
That's always been my favorite part of the Bible. Little naked Eve coming into the picture.
Uncle Harry loved ribs, religion, and above all, he loved women. I tried to imagine a rib turning into a woman, and then Aunt Leah strolled outside. She stacked a huge pile of ribs onto a serving platter while I studied her round face and body. I tried to see the resemblance between Aunt Leah and dinner. They were both kind of meaty and rosy, but that was it, and it wasn't enough. Uncle Harry took me aside.
Eileen, one day you'll be a woman too.
I figured a vague and powerful spirit would pull me out of some guy's heaving ribcage, rinse me off, and then I'd understand everything. Susan came over to visit. I was playing with my pet snail named The. Susan was 2 grades older. She told me about a movie she just saw at school, a movie about puberty. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't really care. Then Susan whipped out a giant glass shaker and buried my snail under a mound of sea salt. He started to look bad, real bad. Susan said that's what puberty looks like. She learned it in the movie she saw at school. Was puberty turning bubbly green and then just disappearing? Susan didn't know. Susan changed the subject. She whipped out a movie magazine with Liz Taylor and Richard Burton on the cover and told me all about French kissing. Susan was always onto something new. I wasn't. How could she think about tongues at a time like this? I stared at my empty pet shell and wondered, where had the gone? I began to worry about the day I'd leave my old familiar body and just disappear. In 7th grade, I took sewing class. I made a spaghetti strap dress, a pair of pantaloons, and a party blouse with darts. Now, darts are little folded bits of material that house breasts. I didn't have any breasts, but that didn't stop my sewing teacher from wrapping a tape around my chest to measure what she called my bust. I held my breath. I stuck out my ribs. I had to measure 28 inches. They didn't make bras smaller than 28 inches, and I had to get a bra. Oh, bras, a stupid white line across your back for boys to oogle and snap. Junior high resonated from the sound. I wore my new blouse home. At dinner, my sister said, "Your darts point in instead of out." My dad said, "Your blouse looks like an oversized life vest. I wonder if it floats." Uncle Harry was just Uncle Harry. My little brother was hiding under the table. In the middle of Cool Whip and Bundt Cake, I begged my mother for a bra. "Please." Mom calmed me down and took me to a ladies' store. She led me into what she called the foundations department. Mom stuck her hand into a pile of stuff and fished out something big and white, and I was wearing a bra. But it was different than any bra I'd ever seen before. It was padded with huge rubber falsies. I was embarrassed. I had to figure out something else to do. Whenever I wore a white shirt to school, I decided to stretch some adhesive tape across my back. Mom always told me boys like mystery. They'd get real surprised when they reached out to snap it. I used to feel real comfortable. I liked being alone. When other kids went to boy-girl parties on Saturday night, I'd stay home, bake a lemon spreckle cake, set my hair with beer, and watch goofy stuff on TV. Everything was great until that one Saturday when I went to the movies and saw Gidget Goes Hawaiian. Gidget was in love with this handsome boy named Moondoggie. He had such a beautiful smile. I don't know what happened, but the minute I laid eyes on him, my entire world turned upside down. When I left the movie, I felt real bad. I thought it was from eating too many Milk Duds. It wasn't. It was my heart. Somehow, during Gidget Goes Hawaiian, my heart was tossed and turned into a million tiny pieces. In its place was a dark sack full of an unknown kind of longing. When I got home, I ran right to the mirror. Somehow I had changed. The hair on my legs had grown 5 inches and bristled out of control. My nose was as big as my foot. My neck was too skinny. My eyes were all bloodshot. My bangs had gone haywire. I'd have to iron them again. I was desperate to solve the problem of just being me. That night, my parents went to a party. I turned off the TV. I turned off the lights. My dance teacher always encouraged me to work deep, deep, deep from the inside. I never knew what she meant until now. I struck a pose of loneliness, emptiness, and melancholy. I imagined Moondoggie floating on the ceiling. His image helped me leap higher. Moondoggie, just out of reach. My body twisted into a pose that was pure drama. Moondoggie brought something out in me I never knew I had. Being without him was a really good way to be with him. After that, it was boys, boys, boys. There was Kenny, who had beautiful penmanship, and Creighton with the softest ears. There was George, who'd spin me in circles, and Stanley the clown, Sexy Robert, and of course, there was Finley. It was time to try out for junior high orchestra. Mr. Green and Miss Murphy called me up on stage. I told them I played the timpani. I didn't. I'd never even seen it before. But Finley played the snare drum, and I wanted to play with Finley. For the next 4 weeks, we drummed together. We never spoke. It didn't matter. My whole world revolved around those percussive moments. I thought Finley really liked me, until Faye showed up. She played the triangle. She came from another school. She wore white lipstick, and she was really stacked. Finley lost control. He dropped his drumsticks, smoothed back his hair, and chased Faye behind the velvet curtain. That afternoon, I quit orchestra. After Finley, there was Philip with teeth that glowed in the dark, Danny, who could really sock a tetherball, Ronnie, who did a mean surfer stomp, and Ricky, who told me he loved me one night on my new pink Princess phone. The weirdest thing about boys was how different each of them could make you feel. Take Neil. He and I just played a game of softball. Afterward, we went to the park. He started to stare at me. I thought he was admiring my new Gil Hodges mitt, or my pretty eyes. Then he said,
Gosh, you have a mustache and warts all over your neck. Do you have toads for friends?
warts? 2 weeks later, I went to a dance with Henry.
Ilene,
Yes?
you have the softest skin, the prettiest ribbon, and so many cute freckles.
Freckles? Warts? Who was telling the truth? Was Henry or was Neil? Did I have a mustache or didn't I? According to science, I got through puberty long ago, but I'm not convinced. Sure, my body parts changed and I'm finally used to my outside. But those first delicious, disturbing emotions, inside, are percolating away, same as ever. And today, so many years later, I still cringe when Neil crosses my mind, and still blush when I see someone who reminds me of Henry. Henry. Where are you, Henry?
Meet the first woman, just like that.
Uncle Harry, it isn't that easy.
Sure it is.
Oh, Uncle Harry, you don't remember, do you? You just remember the good stuff.
Just like creation.
That's my Harry.